Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Reading Rainbows, where we're reading Inkheart by Cornelia Funke. And today we are going to read chapters 45 and 46, since they're kind of short. So let's get started. Chapter 45, Telling Lies to Basta. If you see the laird, tell him what ye hear. Tell him this makes the 1,219 times that Janet Clouston has called down the curse on him and his house. Byron stable, man, guest and master, wife, miss or bairn. Black, black be their fall. Robert Louis Stevenson, kidnapped. It took Finoglio only a few words to persuade the guard outside the door that he had to speak to Basta at once. The old man was a gifted liar. He could spin stories out of thin air faster than a spider spins its web. "What do you want, old man?" asked Basta when he was standing in the doorway. He had brought the tin soldier. "Here, little witch," he said to Meggie, handing her the soldier. "I'd have thrown it in the fire, but nobody here listens to me these days." The tin soldier started at the word fire. His mustache bristled and his eyes looked so alarmed it touched Maggie's heart. When she put her hands protectively around him, she thought she felt his heart beating. She remembered the end of his story. The soldier melted. The next day, when the maid emptied the stove, she found a little tin heart, which was all that was left of him. "That's right, no one listens to you anymore. I can see that for myself." Finoglio looked sympathetically at Basta, as a father might look at his son, which in a way he was. "And that's why I wanted a word with you." He lowered his voice and spoke in a conspiratorial whisper. "I'm offering you a deal." "A deal?" Basta scrutinized him with a mixture of wariness and arrogance. "Yes, a deal," repeated Finoglio softly. "I'm bored here. I'm a scribbler, as you so aptly put it. I need paper to live on much as other people need bread and wine and so forth." The attitude of the Italians. At least I believe that this takes place in Italy. Yeah, "Oh yeah, I need paper as much as other people need wine." Which, is all well and good. It's just an amusing idea to me, considering I don't drink, so, I certainly don't need wine to live on. "Bring me some paper, Basta, and I'll help you get those keys back. You remember, the keys that the magpie took away from you." Basta took out his knife. When he snapped it open, the tin soldier began trembling so much that the bayonet slipped from his tiny hands. "How?" asked Basta, cleaning his fingernails with the tip of the knife. "Ugh, I hate people that do that. My father cleans his fingernails with the tip of a knife, and it just gets to me on a visceral level, especially if it's a properly sharp knife. I don't see how they're not, stabbing themselves, in that place where the fingernail meets the finger, you know what I mean? I hate when I stab myself there with, a piece of paper or something. How can you use the tip of a knife to clean there? Ugh. Finoglio bent down to him. "I'll write you a magic charm to put a hex on Mortola. A hex that will keep her in bed for weeks and give you time to show Capricorn you are the rightful keeper of the keys." "Of course, that kind of charm doesn't work instantly. It needs time. But believe you me, when it does start to take effect..." Finoglio raised his eyebrows meaningfully. But Basta only wrinkled his nose in scorn. "I've already tried with spiders, and parsley, and salt. The old woman's proof against them all." "Parsley and spiders?" Finoglio laughed quietly. "What a fool you are, Basta. I'm not talking about children's magic. I mean the magic of the written word. Nothing is more powerful for good or evil, I do assure you. I'm just wondering what sort of charms or hexes or whatever involve, parsley and spiders. I mean, what? What do you do with the spiders? What kind of spiders? Finoglio lowered his voice to a whisper. I made you yourself out of words and letters, Basta. You and Capricorn. Basta flinched. Fear and hatred are closely linked, and Meggie saw both on his face. He believed the old man. He believed every word of it. You're a sorcerer, he muttered. You and the girl alike. You both ought to be burned like those accursed books. And her father, too. He quickly spat 3 times at the old man's feet. Ah, spitting, what's that supposed to prevent? The evil eye? Finoglio mocked him. That notion of burning us isn't a very new idea, Basta. But then you never were fond of new ideas. Well, are we in business or aren't we? Basta stared at the tin soldier until Meggie hid him behind her back. Very well, he growled. But I will check what you've been scribbling every day, understand? How are you going to do that, thought Meggie, when you can't read? Basta looked at her as if he'd heard her thoughts. I know one of the maids, he said. She'll read it to me, so don't try any tricks, right? Of course not, Finoglio nodded energetically. Oh, yes, and a pen would be a good idea, too. A black one, if possible. Basta brought the pen and a whole stack of white typing paper. Finoglio sat down at the table with a purposeful look, put the first sheet of paper in front of him, folded it, and then tore it neatly into 9 parts. He wrote 5 letters on each piece. They were ornate, barely legible, and always the same. Then he carefully folded these notes, spat once on each, handed them to Basta, and told him to hide them as he told them. 3 where she sleeps, 3 where she eats, and 3 where she works. Then, after 3 days and 3 nights, the desired effect will set in. But should the accursed woman ever find one of the notes, the magic will instantly turn against you. What's that supposed to mean? Basta stared at Finoglio's notes, as if they would strike him with a plague on the spot. Best to hide them where she won't find them, was all Finoglio replied as he propelled Basta toward the door. If it doesn't work, old man, growled Basta before he closed the door behind him, I will decorate your face to match dust fingers. Then he was gone, and Finoglio leaned against the closed door with a satisfied smile. But it won't work, whispered Meggie. So, 3 days are a long time, replied Finoglio, sitting down at the table again, and I hope we won't need that long. After all, we want to prevent an execution tomorrow evening, don't we? He spent the rest of the day alternately staring into space and writing like a man possessed. More and more of the white sheets were covered with his large handwriting, scrawled impatiently over the paper. Meggie didn't disturb him. She sat by the window with the tin soldier, looking at the hills and wondering exactly where Mo was hiding among all the branches and leaves there. The tin soldier sat beside her, his legs stretched straight out in front of him, looking with fear in his eyes at the world that was so entirely new to him. Perhaps he was thinking of the paper ballerina he loved so much, or perhaps he wasn't thinking at all. He said not a single word. Yeah, I mean, you've got to think that, especially to like a small tin toy soldier, imagine being ripped out of your story and thrust into this world. Yeah, everything is new, everything is different, and, does he understand properly what everyone is saying? Or is it all just gibberish to him, and that's what's causing his fear? I mean, how would you feel if you were suddenly ripped out of your world and landed in an entirely new world? You'd probably be terrified too. Chapter 46. Woken in the Dead of Night. Let us use our magic and enchantments to conjure up a woman out of flowers. Math and Gwydion took the flowers of oak and broom and meadowsweet, and from those conjured up the loveliest and most beautiful girl anyone had seen. They baptized her with the form of baptism that was used then, and named her Blodeuwedd. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Blodeuedd. I'm sorry, I don't speak, Gaelic or Celtic or any other language that it looks like that name is taken from. So I'm probably badly pronouncing that. I'm sorry. Math, son of Mathenly, from the Mabinogion, translated by Geoffrey Gantz. Night had fallen long ago, but Finoglio was still writing. Under the table lay the sheets of paper he had crumpled up or torn. He had discarded many more pages than he had laid aside, collecting those few pages very carefully, as if the words themselves might slip off the paper. When one of the maids, a skinny little thing, brought their supper, Finoglio hid the written sheets he had kept beneath the covers of his bed. Basta did not return that evening. Perhaps he was too busy hiding Finoglio's magic charms. Maggie did not go to bed until everything outside was so dark she couldn't distinguish the hills from the sky. She left the window open. "Good night," she whispered into the dark, as if Mo could hear her. Then she took the tin soldier and clambered up to her bed. She put the little soldier by her pillow. "You're better off than Tinker Bell, honestly," she whispered to him. "Basta has her in his room because he thinks fairies bring good luck. And if we ever get out of here, I promise I'll make you a ballerina just like the one in your story." "That's sweet." Aww. The tin soldier said nothing in reply to that either. He just looked at her with his sad eyes. Then, barely perceptibly, he nodded. Has he lost his voice too, wondered Maggie? Or could he never speak? His mouth did look as if he had never once opened it. If I had the book here, she thought, I could read the story and find out. Or I could try to bring the ballerina out of it for him. No, don't bring more stuff out of books, Maggie. You see how miserable it makes them. But the magpie had the book. She had taken all the books away. The tin soldier leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. No, the ballerina would only break his heart, thought Maggie before she fell asleep. The last sound she heard was Finoglio's pen scribbling over the paper, writing word after word as fast as a weaver's shuttle turning black threads into colorfully patterned cloth. Maggie did not dream of monsters that night. Not even a spider scurried through her dream. Even though she dreamed of a room that appeared to be the bedroom in Eleanor's house, she knew that she was at home. Excuse me. Mo was there too, and so was her mother. She looked like Eleanor, but Maggie knew she was the woman who'd been in the net hanging beside Dustfinger in Capricorn's church. You know a great many things in dreams, often despite the evidence of your eyes. You just know them. She was about to sit down next to her mother on the old sofa, surrounded by Mo's bookshelves, when someone suddenly whispered her name. "Maggie!" Again and again. "Maggie!" She didn't want to hear it. She wanted the dream to go on and on, but the voice kept calling to her. Maggie recognized it. Reluctantly, she opened her eyes. Finoglio was standing by her bed, his ink-stained fingers as black as the night beyond the open window. "What's the matter? Let me sleep." Maggie turned her back to him. She wanted to return to her dream. Perhaps it was still somewhere there behind her closed eyelids. Oh, I hate that. When I wake up and I was enjoying my dream and I'm like, I just want to go back to that dream. Perhaps it's still there, but of course you never go back to the same dream. and you always end up disappointed. Perhaps a little of its happiness still clung like gold dust to her lashes. Don't dreams and fairy tales sometimes leave a token behind? The tin soldier was still asleep, with his head sunk on his chest. "I finished," Finoglio whispered. Even with the guard's snores reverberating through the door, she couldn't ignore it. Maggie yawned and sat up. A thin pile of handwritten sheets of paper lay on the table in the light of the flickering candle. "We're going to try an experiment," whispered Finoglio. "Let's see whether your voice and my words can change what happens in a story. We're going to try to send the little soldier back." He quickly picked up the handwritten sheets and put them on her lap. "It's not the best of ideas to try the experiment with a story I didn't write myself, but that can't be helped. What do we have to lose?" "Send him back? But I don't want to send him back," said Maggie, horrified. "He'll die if he goes back. The little boy throws him into the stove and he melts, and the ballerina burns up." Among the ashes lay the metal spangle from the ballerina's dress. It had been burned as black as coal. "No, no!" Finoglio impatiently tapped the sheets of paper on her lap. "I've written him a new story with a happy ending. That was your father's idea. Changing what happens in stories." But, yeah, I don't really like that idea, because, while, oh yeah, you want to make sure that everyone has a happy ending and all, you don't change the stories. No matter how sad they end up that way for a reason. I mean, if someone decided to change Harry Potter and rewrite it so that, Harry's mother never died, yeah, that would change, everything. You don't change the stories. He just wanted to get your mother back. He wanted Inkheart rewritten to give her up again. But if the idea really works, Maggie, if you can change the fate of a character you read out of a book by adding new words to his story, then maybe you can change everything about it. Who comes out, who goes in, how it ends, who's happy and who's unhappy afterward. Do you understand? It's just a trial run, Maggie. If the tin soldier disappears, then believe me, we can change Inkheart too. I still have to work out just how. But for now, will you read this aloud, please? Finoglio took the flashlight out from under the pillow and put it in Maggie's hand. Hesitantly, she turned the beam on the first densely written page. Suddenly, her mouth went dry. Does it really end well? She ran her tongue over her lips and looked at the sleeping tin soldier. She thought she heard a tiny snore. Yes, I've written a truly sentimental happy ending. Finoglio nodded impatiently. He moves to the toy castle with the paper ballerina, and they live happily ever after. No melted heart, no burnt paper, nothing but their blissful love. Your writing is difficult to read. What? I went to endless trouble. It's difficult all the same. The old man sighed. Oh, all right, said Maggie. I'll try. Every letter, she thought, every single letter matters. Let the words echo, ring out, whisper and rustle and roll like the thunder. Then she began to read. At the third sentence, the tin soldier sat bolt upright. Maggie saw him out of the corner of her eye. For a moment, she almost lost the thread of the story, stumbled over a word, and reread it. After that, she dared not look at the little soldier again, until Finoglio put his hand on her arm. He's gone, he breathed. Maggie, he's gone. He was right. The bed was empty. Finoglio squeezed her arm so hard it hurt. You truly are a little enchantress, he whispered. And I didn't do so badly myself, did I? No, definitely not. He looked with some awe at his ink-stained fingers. Then he clapped his hands and danced around the cramped room like an old bear. When he finally stopped beside Maggie's bed again, he was rather breathless. "You and I are about to prepare a most unpleasant surprise for Capricorn," he whispered, a smile lurking in every one of his wrinkles. "I'll set to work at once. Oh, yes, he'll get what he wants. You'll read the shadow out of the book for him, but his old friend will be slightly changed, I guarantee that. I, Finoglio, master of words, enchanter in ink, sorcerer on paper." Gee, he doesn't think much of himself, does he? "I made Capricorn, and I shall destroy him as if he never existed." Which, I have to admit, would have been better. Poor Capricorn, he'll be no better off than the magician who conjured up a flower maiden for his nephew. Do you know that story? Maggie was staring at the place where the tin soldier had been. She missed him. "No," she muttered. "What flower maiden?" "It's a very old story. I'll tell you the short version. The long one is better, but it will soon be late. Well, there was once a magician called Woken who had a nephew. He loved his nephew better than anything in the world, but his mother had put a curse on the young man." "Why?" "It would take too long to tell you that part now. Anyway, she cursed him. If he ever touched a woman, he would die. This broke the magician's heart. Must his favorite nephew be condemned to being sad and lonely forever? No, was he not a magician? So he shut himself up in the chamber where he worked magic for 3 days and 3 nights and made a woman out of flowers. The flowers of oak and broom and meadowsweet, to be precise. There was never a more beautiful woman in the world, and Gwydion's nephew fell in love with her at first sight. But, oh God, here's that name again. But Bladued, for that was her name, was his undoing. She fell in love with another man, and the two of them killed the magician's nephew." Bladued. Maggie savored the name like an exotic fruit. How sad. What happened to her? Did the magician kill her too as her punishment? No, Gwydion turned her into an owl, and to this day all owls sound like a weeping woman. I'm sorry, but how does hoot, hoot sound like a weeping woman? That just, no. There's got to be a better reason for why owls sound the way they do. "That's beautiful. Sad and beautiful," murmured Maggie. Why were sad stories often so beautiful? It was different in real life. "Okay, so now I know the story of the flower maiden," she said, "but what does it have to do with Capricorn?" "The point is that Bladued didn't do what was expected of her, and that's our own plan. Your voice and my words, beautiful, brand new words, will see to it that Capricorn's shadow does not do what's expected of him." Finoglio looked as pleased as a tortoise who had found a fresh lettuce leaf somewhere entirely unexpected. "Quit comparing this guy to a tortoise, oh my God!" "What exactly is he to do?" Finoglio wrinkled his brow. His satisfaction was all gone. "I'm still working on that," he said crossly, tapping his forehead. "In here, it takes time." "Yo, dude, you ain't got much time." Voices were raised outside, men's voices. They came from the other side of the wall. Maggie slipped quickly off her bed. I just noticed a typo in here, a misspelling of quickly. You can't see it, but it just totally pulled me out of the story. Quickly. Quickly. Sorry. Maggie slipped quickly off her bed and ran to the open window. She heard footsteps, rapid, stumbling, fleeing footsteps, then shouts. She leaned out of the window so far she almost fell out, but she could see nothing. The noise seemed to come from the square outside the church. "Careful," whispered Finoglio, grasping her shoulders. More shouts, more shots were heard. Capricorn's men were calling to one another. Their voices sounded angry and excited. Oh, why couldn't she make out what they were saying? She looked at Finoglio, her eyes full of fear. Perhaps he'd been able to understand some of the shouting. Words? Names? I know what you're thinking, but it certainly wasn't your father, he soothed her. He wouldn't be crazy enough to creep into Capricorn's house at night. Gently, he drew her back from the window. The voices died away. The night became still again, as if nothing had happened. Her heart beating fast, Meggie went back to bed. Finoglio helped her up. Make him kill Capricorn, she whispered. Make the shadow kill him. Her own words frightened her, but she did not take them back. Finoglio rubbed his forehead. Yes, I suppose I mustn't I? He murmured. Meggie took Mo's sweater and held it close. Doors slammed somewhere in the house. The sound of footsteps echoed up them. Then all was silent again. It was a menacing silence, a deathly silence, thought Meggie. The word kept going through her mind. Suppose the shadow doesn't obey you, she asked, like the flower maiden. Then what? We had better not even think of that, replied Finoglio slowly. And that's the end of that chapter. I thank you for joining me. I hope you're having a great day. And I will see you again next time.